In this lesson, we'll be using the paintbrush tool. So let's take a look at our project. So we have a few layers here. Let's go ahead and open up our layers panel. And if we select this little icon that looks like two pieces of paper on top of each other, we'll see that we have a pencil sketch layer that we'll be using as a guideline. And we also have this ink lines layer. And this is the layer that we'll actually be painting on. So let's go ahead and close that out once we know that we have the right layer selected. And let's grab our paintbrush tool. And so the paintbrush tool will need to be defined really before we can use it, because sometimes you might even have an icon instead of a paintbrush that looks like a circle with a line through it. And we need to come over to our brushes. And you can see that we do have a basic brush, and then you may have some other brushes that maybe you've selected and they're in your palette. But in order to get more brushes, let's go ahead and select this panel right here. And we're going to choose artistic brushes. And maybe we're going to use these artistic calligraphic brushes and take a look at some of these down here. So what we can do is we can choose any of these brushes, and then they'll actually appear up in our panel once we've selected them. So if I choose the 40-point brush, or this 50-point, or this little 20-point oval, then they're just going to show up in our panel. Now if I selected it more than once, it's going to just stay there. But if I wanted to edit this 30-point, let's say, and I try to double click on it, I can't actually alter it, but I can come up into my brushes panel and I can make any kind of alterations to it that I need. I can change that roundness, maybe if I wanted that to be a little less round, and maybe I wanted to bring that point size down to match my project. So if I had a very, very large brush, let's go ahead and leave it at, let's say 26 and hit OK. And that line is just not really going to work for me. But if I wanted to double click on that and edit it, I'm going to bring that down to, let's say, a 12 or maybe a 9, something like that, 10. It's going to ask me, do I want to apply it or leave it? Let's go ahead and apply it. And then now, so it knew that I used this brush, and it allowed me to apply any changes that I made to that brush stroke. So very cool. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. All right, now let's go ahead and use this brush, and we're going to draw our ear, something like that. Now, we have our brush settings set to leave that brush stroke selected, but we can make changes by double clicking on that brush. And we have keep selected, and we have edit selected paths. Now if you are in your default settings, so I hit reset, then we only have edit selected paths. But if you have it set to keep selected, then when you hit OK, then actually if I wanted to maybe change the way this curve is, I could just come through and change that actual path. So I can just click and drag and just change the way that path looks. Now again, maybe I think that that's a little too thin there. I can double click on that brush. I can maybe change that roundness to be a little more round, so add just a little bit more percentage to that and hit OK. And we're going to apply it. So you can see it kind of change that line variation to where the thin part wasn't as thin. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some other brushes that we have. Maybe we'll choose some artistic, but maybe some artistic ink. So you can see that we have lots of very cool brushes down here. Let's actually take a look at this brush. So when I select it, you can see that I had this brush stroke selected. It actually changed it. And I can actually come down and just kind of preview any of these brushes that I want. And so, you know, this is very handy if you want to just kind of take a look and just see if any of these are going to work out. Then you can quickly go through your brushes and, you know, just kind of see which ones work best for you. And so I do like the way this brush looks down here, and I can double click on it, and I can make changes to it. So maybe I can tell it that, you know, maybe this brush stroke, I want to keep that percentage down a little bit. Maybe I want to bring that down to like 80%. And then, you know, I do want to stretch it to fit the length. And so I think this is going to work great. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to apply. So you can see that that brush stroke is just a little bit smaller. But I don't want to keep my brush stroke selected now. So I'm just going to turn this off, but I do want to edit anything that is selected. So that way, if I did come through and I wanted to draw his eyebrow, then it's not going to try and edit that path that I draw. And so now I can come through, and even for his nose, you can see that his nose is a little bit longer path. And I can almost make a complete circle, and it stretched that brush stroke all the way around. So very, very cool. So this is our brush strokes and our different palettes that we have. Let's take a look at another brush. So maybe this time we're going to use a bristle brush. So if we open up our bristle brush library, these are some very, very cool brushes. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off our layers, or our pencil sketch layer, because our bristle brushes are very, very cool. So I'm going to choose this little 6-point mop, and I'm going to come through here and just take a look at how awesome that brush is. So the reason why I turned off the layer for our pencil sketch is because it's very, very similar in color. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And so maybe this time I'm going to edit this brush. So you can see that we have 6 millimeters for our size. Maybe we want to bring that down just a little. Then we have the different adjustments that we can make for the bristle thickness, for the opacity, for the stiffness. So I want to bring that opacity down a little bit. And then the stiffness, maybe I want to make it just a little more flexible. I'm going to hit OK. And so I'm going to just kind of add some shading to our dog's face, something like that. And then maybe I'll color in his ear. So it's a very organic brush, and you can have a lot of fun with it. And so since we've already made those brush strokes, again, we can adjust the size, and we can hit preview now. And this will allow us to go ahead and see any adjustments that we make to that brush. We can actually change the density of like how many bristles are in that brush as well. So a very, very cool tool. I'm going to go ahead and apply those strokes. So that is a basic rundown of how we use the paintbrush. And in our next lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the blob brush.